welcome to Jewish World Weekly on I-24 News. I'm Emily Francis. Every week, we focus on stories, issues, and personalities of Jewish interest, both here in Israel and throughout the diaspora, the global Jewish community. And as always, we start with our top 5 items in the Jewish world today, presented by Alex Schloss. Hi, Alex.
Thanks, Emily. Here are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. At the White House's annual Hanukkah celebrations, President Donald Trump said Congress is becoming anti-Semitic and claimed the Jewish lobby is no longer the most powerful force in Washington. He singled out progressive Democrats such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar, while reiterating his support for Jewish Americans and Israel. This comes as the Republicans have denied accusations of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic sentiments within their own party. British police have banned the chant "Globalize the Intifada" at protests and given officers power to take action against anyone using the phrase. The move follows recent terror attacks committed against Jews in Manchester and Sydney, which authorities say changed the context around such slogans. The police have said that this is an attempt to reduce the fears of the British Jewish community. Belgian authorities will withdraw the 16 federal police officers who have been protecting Antwerp's Jewish quarter in the new year. The Jewish community has heightened security for over a decade, and no formal reason was given for the withdrawal. Antwerp's acting mayor, Els van Doesburg, called the decision incomprehensible and warned it could create a security vacuum, potentially harming Belgian Jews. Israeli tourists could soon be required to hand over 5 years of social media history to enter the United States. The proposal comes from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security as part of a planned change to the ESTA visa waiver system. It would apply to travelers from 42 countries, including Israel, who currently enter without a visa for short stays. And finally, archaeologists discovered a rare 1,300-year-old lead pendant bearing a 7-branch menorah in rubble in Jerusalem's Old City. The artifact dates back to the late Byzantine period and was found near the Temple Mount. Only one similar pendant is known to exist worldwide. Researchers say it points to a Jewish presence in the city at a time when Jews were officially barred. And those are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Back to you, Emily.
1 week since the Bondi Beach massacre at the Hanukkah celebration there, the Jewish community of Sydney has been going to funerals of their beloved rabbis and fellow congregants. But in the midst of the grief, there is anger and a feeling of abandonment by the Australian government. Joining us now is Joel Burney, Executive Manager for Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council. Joel, thank you so much for joining us. And let's start with, of course, it's been a grueling week since a horrific attack. How is the Australian Jewish community holding up?
Well, the community has been under siege since the horrific events of October 7, 2023. We've had a very well noted and publicized escalation in anti-Semitic attacks since we all saw and were embarrassed by the protests outside the steps of the Opera House on the 9th of October 2023. So we've suffered so dramatically, and the tragedy of last Sunday night has just been so woeful on our community. But the tragedy and the sadness and the sorrow that we're feeling is now transformed into deep anger at the response by our government. The atmosphere in Australia has been created by the binary nature of the pro-Palestinian advocacy movement here, the toxicity and the violent rhetoric and the escalating violence. Globalize the Intifada week after week. I have 2 young daughters. I've, for 2 years, been unable to take them down to downtown Melbourne on a Sunday afternoon because it's just too dangerous for them. So this atmosphere has been able to be created where this type of event where 15 innocent people were gunned down just because they were Jewish has been allowed to happen. And the reason why we're so angry right now is because we have a prime minister where this happened on his watch. And all he can do is defend his actions. All he can do is say what he's done and what he did and what they were doing. So my message is this: if the Prime Minister of Australia is not responsible for the death of those 15 people, then who is?
Clearly, I could feel your anger. I know you're not alone, with a lot of Australians feeling the same way. And I felt like an attack like this was inevitable. What can be done in the future, if anything, to prevent this sense of inevitability?
So the leaders need to lead. And I know that sounds really simple, but this has been going on for such a long period of time that it's a leadership vacuum where you need to step up, you need to do things that are uncomfortable, you need to have uncomfortable conversations. So in the immediate term, what needs to happen is that Jewish issues and Jewish demands for more action need to be taken seriously. So there needs to be significant reforms and immediate reforms in monitoring of university campuses, for instance. There needs to be significant reform and monitoring of the hate that is coming out of the Australian Muslim community and the hate preachers. There needs to be an immediate stop to the pro-Palestinian rallies on the streets of the major cities, most notably Sydney and Melbourne. No more should we tolerate on the streets of those cities chants of death, death to the IDF, all Zionists are terrorists, and globalize the Intifada. That's the immediate step. But most importantly, in the long term, well, actually in the short term, but the outcome will be in a longer term, is that we need what we have in Australia. It's called a Royal Commission. There's deep respect for a Royal Commission, which is a formation of a judicial inquiry that has significant legal weight to compel people to testify and to look into certain evidence and demand certain evidence. And it needs to do two very important things. It first and most importantly needs to find out how this all happened in the terms of anti-Semitism. How did this take root in Australian society? Which institutions are infested with anti-Semitism, and make recommendations as to how to move forward, either legislatively or from a societal point of view, to rid this country of the Jew hatred problem that it obviously has. And the second thing that the Royal Commission needs to find out is to what actually went wrong on the day. Why were only 3 police officers patrolling not just a Jewish event of 1,000 people, but also the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 people that would have been on the foreshore? So there were obvious failures here.
There's been a huge uptick since October 7th of Australians opening up Aliyah files, anticipation of perhaps moving to Israel. Do you feel Australia is safe for Jews or no longer?
We love this country. Jewish people have been in Australia since what we call the First Fleet, 1788. We've been here for well over 200 years. We've been at the tops of governments. We've been governors generals, heads of state, chief justice, justices of the High Court, esteemed in an army and in different professions and in philanthropy and in science. We've contributed to this country. We've built parts of this country. We've given so much to this country, and we love this country so dearly. And everything that Israelis love about Australia, it's still there. There's glimmers of it. It's still there. So we don't want to leave. We want to fight. We want to be resilient. But at the same time, we have a very large, and Melbourne specifically has the largest portion of Holocaust survivors outside of Israel. And so within that, second part of the difficulty in answering the question is the second part, and that's the opposite side. And that is in the context of having such Holocaust trauma input in the building blocks of our community and the mentality of our community, we're not stupid. So we see the writings on the wall. I'm now of the position that, given the government's response since the massacre, that there is a probability now that this is going to happen again. So if that's true, if I listen to myself now, and you say you've got this beautiful country of Israel that's coming out of a terrible war but is going to be stronger and mightier for it, regionally safer, regional hegemonic power, an economy that's going to boom, Tel Aviv of all places to live doesn't sound half bad, and the protection of, and also the most important thing, the ability to be free as a Jew. Israel is an amazing place and a resilient place, and we all love it. So the temptation is there. So, but on the other hand, I do not want to give any of your viewers the impression that we are not a resilient and tough people down here, and we'll continue to fight to stay here for as long as we can.
And how exactly is the Jewish community going to rebuild from this?
The country needs to rebuild. This was an attack on our country. It was a specific attack on Jews, but it was an attack on our country. What happened is not within the value system of this country. So in terms of rebuild, it's not just a rebuild for the Jewish community. The country has to rebuild. We need our non-Jewish Aussie brothers and sisters to call out the rubbish and say, no, that's not acceptable. Regardless if it's part of your religious creed or your religious philosophy or your religious ideology, no, it's against what Australiana is. So my hope is, and what I'm currently seeing, is a change in all of Australia. So as this was an attack on all of Australia, the rebuild is through all of Australia as well.
Joel Burney, Executive Manager for the Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much for having me.
The relationship between Israel and the UK has also faltered since Keir Starmer's Labour government took office last year, with many British Jews who voted for Starmer now willing to vote against him in future elections, despite his purging of the accused anti-Semitic former leader Jeremy Corbyn. But Labour Friends of Israel is still going strong, fighting for the Jewish and Zionist opinion. Here's more from I24 News' Joe Brown, who quizzed Mark Seawards, the parliamentary head of Labour Friends of Israel, about whether his government can be trusted.
Many British Jews and Zionists had been turned away from the Labour Party because of the actions of Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader, but a lot of them came back to vote for Keir Starmer in the last election. Now some of these people have said that they will never vote for the Labour Party again. They feel betrayed by the actions of Keir Starmer regarding the conflict between Israel and Gaza. How do you think you can win those voters back?
In order to win some of these people back who do feel let down, we need to take real concrete action to show that anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism that we're seeing exploding on our campuses and around our country now is absolutely not welcome in the UK. I was at a Hanukkah event last night with the Prime Minister, and he spoke very well about this. He spoke unapologetically about the need to tackle Islamist extremists and those that want to expel Jewish people and ostracize Jewish people just for the fact that they are Jewish. He talked about the fact that we need to protect the Jewish community and invest in security, but it can't just be about a sticking plaster. We can't just build a ring of steel around every synagogue, around every Jewish school. We have to actually deal with the scourge of anti-Semitism by calling it out and also dealing with it as and when it appears during these marches that we're seeing regularly across the UK.
And on that point, exactly, just a couple of months ago, very close to your home constituency, there was a terror attack at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester that led to the deaths of 2 Jewish worshippers. We're speaking just a couple of days after the Bondi Beach massacre in Sydney, in which 15 Jews were killed. In both cases, there was a very noticeable similarity. People kept saying that this was an inevitability, that they were prepared for this, they knew that this was going to happen. So how can you prevent this from happening? How can you protect the Jewish people in the UK?
Yes, and those members of the Jewish community that said they were warning about this attack for a long time are absolutely not wrong. It definitely did feel inevitable, when certainly amongst the Jewish community members that I was speaking to in the months and years building up to the attack. And now we've seen these 2 horrific attacks in Heaton Park and Bondi Beach. And of course, there will be more if we do not deal with anti-Semitism now. Now, the government's done the right thing since we came into office. We've invested money into protection around synagogues, into protection around Jewish schools. We've given funds to CST as well so that they can conduct their security operations more effectively. But there's far more we can do. So we've already talked about the fact we're going to change the rules around repeat protests, for instance, because we know that repeat protests are happening up and down across the UK. And some of these protests, we are seeing anti-Semitic incidents, we are seeing anti-Semitic chanting, and that just cannot continue to happen. It has been allowed to happen. It has been allowed to go unchallenged, and that will need to change. And our Home Secretary, our new Home Secretary, newish Home Secretary, has been very clear about the need to change that too. It's vital that we protect the Jewish community, because I don't want to be on your program in a year's time. I don't want to be at a Hanukkah event in number 10 in a year's time, talking about the same things, talking about the scourge of anti-Semitism, how we need to deal with it, how we need to treat it, as the scourge that it is, how we need to deal with it now, having taken no action over the last year. So the Prime Minister's saying the right things, the government's saying the right things, but now we need to back it up with action.
Mark Stewart, Member of Parliament for the Labour Party and the Parliamentary Chair of the Labour Friends of Israel, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Turning now to New York, where a pioneering New York City rabbi is vying to become the first female rabbi in U.S. history to hold state office. Stephanie Ruske is running for New York State Assembly, representing Manhattan's Upper West Side, and she joins us now from New York. Hello, and thank you for being here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
A brave woman indeed. You've already clearly shown real leadership as the Associate Dean of the Jewish Theological Seminary. Do you feel in the past decade you've accomplished everything you've set out to do, and now it's just time for a new chapter to take those skills forward?
I don't think anybody ever feels they've accomplished everything they've planned to do, and it's time to leave. There's always more that you could do. You can go back, and we've never had a year that was a repeat of the previous year. Students change, the world changes. So we're constantly adapting at JTS, but it feels like this is a moment where New York needs leadership. We have incredible leadership. I've been very inspired by all of the legislators I've seen in New York who are fighting back against the many, many challenges happening in this country, mainly out of Washington. And so I feel like this is a place to lead as a rabbi.
Right. So when did you make this decision? Just in, more in the past 2 years, since we've seen the rise in anti-Semitism, or, since all of the controversy, over the mayoral election and feeling the need to represent, the Upper West Side, where I lived for 15 years. So I understand it's a very vibrant, a lot of Jewish people living there.
It is. No, actually, over the last years, I have been out protesting, and I've done accompaniment related to immigration, going to Federal Plaza. I've gone to Delaney Hall in Newark. I've done pastoral work, and I've protested related to immigration in this country. I feel like I can't, as a Jew, live in a country right now where people are being whisked off the streets when they show up for their immigration hearings and sent who knows where. So I have been feeling like I have to do more. It happened to be that our assembly person who is outstanding, Michael Asher, is running for Congress. And so once there was going to be an open seat, in a seat where he was performing excellently, I felt this was a moment where I could do more, and New York needed someone who could do more to follow his legacy. So,
with that said, in this position, I know you won't be dealing necessarily directly with the mayor because it is a state job. What types of things do you want to accomplish, or can you accomplish on a state level?
Yes. Well, New York for All is one thing that has not yet passed in the legislature, but we hope will. And that would say that we don't cooperate with us. It would make New York more livable and more humane. So I'm hoping to work on immigration to make sure that New York is a place where immigrants are safe and everybody else is. I also would like to work on housing. One thing that ultimately made me choose to run is that our rent went up, and everybody's rent is going up. Our salaries are not going up in anywhere near the same amounts, and there's no housing stock. There's a very tiny vacancy rate on the Upper West Side. So if you would like to live here, there's nowhere to move. That's affordable. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I want to invest in the community, and you can't outsource solving your problems to other people.
Yeah. One thing I also noticed the last time I, was in New York, I mean, we've seen, in the decade that I've been in Israel, like a lot of businesses out of business. I mean, you could tell, the Upper West Side has been affected. I mean, since I've noticed it since COVID.
Yeah. Look, there are a lot of storefronts that are empty, which yes, both the city council and the state assembly people can make a difference. You could say that people don't get rent breaks when their storefront is empty. Like, there are ways to put pressure on landlords who would rather have the space empty than put in a business that may not produce as much income over the long haul as they would like. But it's not good for the community in any way to have so many empty storefronts, and it's something I would want to work on.
It's so hard to see.
And I wouldn't want to fill them with tobacco shops.
Right. No, I mean, even Staples, like places that have been there for such a long time. Anyway, best of luck to you, and we look forward to seeing how it all turns out.
Thank you very much.
Now, turning to chilling news, the 32-year-old son of famed director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle appeared in court last week to face 2 counts of first-degree murder charges. Nick Reiner is accused of stabbing his parents to death inside of their Brentwood home. Here's more in my report on the legacy of Rob Reiner.
Hi, I'm Marty DeBerge. 40 years ago, I was honored to direct a film called This is Spinal Tap.
He was the brains behind Hollywood's most iconic comedies.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
Director and actor Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Reiner were stabbed to death in their Brentwood, California home on the first night of Hanukkah. Police are ruling it a homicide. The 78-year-old, who never won an Oscar, racked up 24 other awards and 36 nominations throughout his career, which dates back to his breakout role as Meathead in All in the Family. And while the family has requested privacy, today's social media is flooded by condolences and tributes. Christopher Guest, the star of This is Spinal Tap, and his wife, Jamie Lee Curtis, released a statement saying that they are numb and shocked over losing a great friend and requested privacy to grieve. From iconic favorites like The Princess Bride,
men and women can't be friends because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive. He always wants to have sex with her.
So you're saying that a man can be friends with a woman he finds unattractive?
No, you pretty much want to nail him too.
To Harry Met Sally, Reiner's legacy will live on. Billy Crystal is said to be devastated of the news. He shared a decades-long friendship and working relationship with Reiner. In 2019, the cast and crew took to the red carpet to celebrate the film's 30th anniversary.
When the three of us got together, it was like falling into something that we've always had. It was the rhythms were there. It was really cool and a lot of fun.
Those are the kinds of movies that you've seen before. You know, and what would it be? You know, when Harry left Sally, when Sally, left Harry, when somebody got sick. It just, if you believe in happily ever after, that's where they live now.
Reiner was showing no signs of slowing down or hanging up the towel, as he made clear at the Cannes Film Festival 3 years ago, where he announced a sequel to Spinal Tap, which was released this year.
It's a big thing to be anywhere at age 75 and getting older as we speak. And I'm energized because, not only are we going to get to, take a second shot at this thing, we got an opportunity to make some more films. And until they tell me you can't do this anymore, I'm going to keep doing it.
Now, for the first time in its history, the Syrian government has granted a license to a Jewish organization aiming to return properties confiscated under previous regimes. Here's more in this report.
In a move Syria's authorities describe as a symbol of religious equality and openness, the government in Damascus has officially licensed the Syrian Jewish Heritage Organization, the first group of its kind to operate under the current administration. The organization, formed by members of Syria's once thriving Jewish community now scattered around the world, says it will catalog Jewish-owned properties and work to return those that were seized during past governments. Particularly under the Assad era, it also plans to protect and restore historic synagogues and other sites central to Jewish heritage in the country.
This is a strong message from the Syrian state that we do not discriminate between one religion and another. Syria helps all Syrian men and women of every religion and sect who want to build our new state.
One of the organization's founders, Henry Hamra, whose father served as one of the last rabbis in Syria before immigrating decades ago, says the effort represents both cultural preservation and restitution. The group has already begun identifying dozens of Jewish-owned houses that were confiscated under the former regime. This development follows a gradual return of some Syrian Jews who left decades ago and a series of cultural visits back to historic synagogues in Damascus and Aleppo. Observers say the step may reflect broader changes since the fall of the previous government more than a year ago and could have implications for minority rights in post-war Syria.
We will work to inventory Jewish properties and reclaim those that were confiscated during the previous regime, in addition to protecting and restoring holy sites.
And that's all from this week's episode of Jewish World Weekly. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to head over to our I-24 News YouTube channel and our website, as well as social media, to catch up on this, as well as previous episodes and interviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Emily Francis, and shalom from Tel Aviv.